Well, good morning and welcome to Elevenses. Sorry, I'm a few minutes late this morning. Slightly, slightly late evening last night, actually. Meeting a Japanese friend from who's visiting from California. But we have plenty for you in today's show. So, what's to start with? Well, we have some news. Something that's not in the little preamble there. I appeared on a video channel. I did an interview, so I'll tell you about that in a minute. We'll have a look at a theft protest ride out from Squires Cafe up in Yorkshire. How connected vehicle data could start to identify dangerous roads before crashes actually happen on them. The DVSA are starting a public trial of a digital vehicle info portal, and a fundraising attempt by a blind former biker needs bikers, and I'll tell you all about that. Meanwhile, Australia has granted type approval to Kawasaki's e-bikes. That's an interesting development. And finally, we'll be back looking at analysing crash data, but what I'll be saying is that actually having the data which tells us about crashes is actually only half the story. We need more information than that. So that's what's in today's show. Make yourself a cuppa, settle yourselves down, and I'll take you through all those stories. Now, don't forget, if you have a question, anything you want to ask, any comments on the content, drop me a line. I will try to cover it during the show if I possibly can. If I can't do it live on air, I will get back to you at the end of the show on the comment streams. So, right, on with let's get rid of that, on with the news. What have we got for you first of all? Well, I just want to say thank you very much to all the contributors who actually dropped me a coffee through my coffee page, and it's always very much appreciated when they do so. So let's have a quick roll of thanks to this week's supporters and subscribers. We have Howard, we have Kelvin, we have Hallam, we have Guzzy Kev, and we have some anonymous donors too. So many thanks to each and every one of you. Your contributions do help me keep writing and webcasting, and crucially they are a big support to the Science of Being Seen project, which gets no external funding at all. I regularly update it after I've trawled through new research papers, and that is available as a resource for any biker anywhere. So if you can spare a cuppa, it'll be gratefully received. But of course you won't just feel good inside, you'll open up access to over 1,000 articles that I've written on biking over the last decade plus. So pop over to my coffee page at the end of the show perhaps and take a look. And don't forget, you can also commission me to solve a specific problem if you've got one. If you want a fix for a riding issue, drop me a line and I'll do my best to sort it out for you. Don't charge a lot for that service. And there are also inexpensive products that you can download, downloads, mini ebooks actually in the shop. So do head over, have a look at the coffee shop, and hopefully you'll find something of interest over there. Right, okay, so anyway, on with the news. What's the first thing that I want to talk about today? Well, I was interviewed just the other day by the Moto Journal Roll On. Now, I'm very pleased to say I got a message out of the blue just a couple of weeks back asking me if I would be happy to present an interview on this particular web channel, and at first I was a little dubious because it's in Russian language, so I did a bit of digging around obviously, and I found out it's actually Ukrainian. So once I realized that, I was happy to go ahead with it, and I met Maria online last week, who put some challenging questions to me about motorcycling. And the first at the time for the interview, she asked me, "You've been teaching people how to ride motorcycles safely for years. You're perfectly correct to say that motorcycles have been around for more than 100 years, but riders are still having the same 100-year-old crashes the very first riders had. In your opinion, why is this still happening? Why is it so hard for riders to understand that their safety depends on their skills?" Well, that is exactly the observation I've been making for the past 3 decades or so, since I've been involved in rider training, and it's a question worth spending some time answering. So that's exactly what I did. If you've got half an hour to spare, go take a look. And when you've finished my interview, go and have a look at some of the other people who've been interviewed on this channel over the last year or two. There are some really impressive names, including Nick Iannach. He's the US writer and former racer. He's responsible for the two Pace articles. You may or may not have heard of those. We wrote them 20 years ago, and to me they still set a standard for the philosophy of riding, particularly as part of a group that's not been surpassed. Other household names that you'll find on there include David Hoff. He's again one of my favourite US authors, written some very, very good books on motorcycling, which I have copies of here. I've got ones actually signed by him. He sent me it after some chat online, which was very nice of him. We also have Andy Ibbott, the UK-based, he was the former director of the Superbike School here in the UK and a racer of note. Lee Parks, another American racer, author. Keith Code, who I'm absolutely positive you'll have heard of. Nick Sanders, Ted Simon, the two travel journalists and just basic weirdos in my opinion, but you've probably got your own views on those two. And motorman Jerry Palladino, who again has been a YouTube contributor for donkey's years, almost since the beginning of the channel. So go and have a look at the interviews, not just mine but also some of the others. I'm really quite proud actually to have my own interview sitting up there in that company, to tell the truth. So I've got some serious watching myself to do as I go and catch up with those particular riders. So what else do we have in the news? Well, you probably noticed that Storm Anthony passed over the UK yesterday, bringing some unusually strong winds for the time of year. It's the first named storm of the 2023-2024 season. It's pretty early, actually. Now, probably for most of us, it wasn't as bad as was actually feared. The worst of the weather was definitely in the west. Down in the southwest, it was along the South Wales coast of Bristol Channel, Devon, Cornwall, and then all the way along the Channel coast. It was pretty windy, but inland, after the heavy rain had cleared, it wasn't actually quite as windy as feared. I was having a pint of beer outdoor in a pub undercover, and it was breezy, but it wasn't blowing our beer over, which was good news. Now, it just happened, of course, it was the busiest day of the year. It's the first Saturday in August. It's when a lot of people set off for their journeys on holiday. And I couldn't help but notice that there were lots and lots of travel warnings and things. For example, by Rod Dennis from the RAC. He was warning that drivers should, quote, slow down significantly to stay safe and avoid exposed moorland and coastal routes until the storm passes. And that it was drivers towing caravans and trailers needed to take extra care. Bikes and boxes on roofs should be secured properly, and motorists should keep an eye out for fallen trees. And in all that, there wasn't a word about powered two-wheelers. Now, I realise that RAC stands for Royal Automobile, but their remit does include motorcycles. They offer recovery for motorcycles, for example. So, it's kind of another indicator, really, isn't it, how sometimes motorcyclists are really on the back foot a bit when it comes to how they're treated on the internet and generally by people. It was a broader picture of motorcycling. So, what else have we got for you in the news today? Well, around 150 bikers actually rode out from Squires Cafe. It's in Sherborne in Elmet. I've never actually been there. That was on Sunday, July the 30th, so a week ago today. They rode out through Crossgates and Seacroft near Leeds, and the protest was raised after West Yorkshire Police had actually organised a meeting where bikers were going to bring their concerns to officers. They cancelled it 2 days before it was due to take place. So the organisers, quite rightly in my opinion, believe there's not enough being done to stop motorcycle theft, although in my opinion it also extends to not enough being done by motorcycle manufacturers to prevent their bikes being stealable in the first place. But Dave Dewar, 59, he said people die when thieves ride stolen motorbikes, and he was speaking to Lee Leeds Live, and he said bike theft in Leeds is epidemic at the moment. People have just been really upset about it in the community. 3 to 4 motorcycles get stolen in my area every week. The thieves get away with it. It's getting so much worse. You can't park a motorbike in Leeds city centre without it being very likely to be stolen, which is an appalling state of affairs, really. Now, Dave runs a group on Facebook for motorcycles, motorcycle enthusiasts. He has thousands of members there, and he has encouraged those worried about bike theft in Leeds to go to the meeting with the police. That was going to happen at the sports bike shop, and when it was cancelled, he switched to the protest ride to draw attention to the issue. Now, Chief Inspector Pete Hall, who's of the West Yorkshire Police, and he said that the force is, quote, acutely aware of the concerns about motorcycle-related crimes and is determined to target the culprits. And he went on to say that one of the challenges we face is in identifying those involved in these incidents, and we would ask the public to let us have any specific information about who in their communities is involved in the antisocial use of motorbikes and any other relevant information, such as where they are keeping vehicles. Now, I'm going to target one little word there, antisocial. This is not the theft issue. This is the use of motorcycles in the wrong place. These riders are often unlicensed. They're almost always uninsured, and it may be that they are using stolen motorcycles, but it includes the sort of e-bikes, which are actually motorcycles, which are increasingly in use. People zipping through parks on these things. We had Deliveroo scooter driving through our own park the other day to take a sort of a 10-second shortcut. So that's a different issue. That's not the same as theft. And he goes on to say, where riders are identified, we always look to seize bikes and take positive action, as well as making referrals to the Leeds antisocial behaviour team and tenancy enforcement. So, again, it's kind of sidestepping the question. Now, the force has reportedly secured £100,000 of Safer Streets funding, but Steve says it's hard for the police to identify suspects and they need to do more. At the end of the day, their off-road teams should be chasing them until they catch them. Yeah, I tend to agree with that. Right, okay, now we've got a comment up. Let's just see who that is. It's Clive saying good morning. Hello, Clive. Nice to see you. So, okay, on with the next piece of news. This is all about linked automobiles. Now, you may or may not be aware that built into modern cars, there's a whole bunch of data tracking pieces of electronics which pull out the way the vehicle is actually being driven and the way it's responding to the road surface. Now, a new analysis for the RAC Foundation has identified what they call many useful applications of this data acquired by cars and other vehicles, including bicycles incidentally, as they utilise the road network. Now, crucially, according to the report, these resources could then be targeted on maintaining the road or changing its layout before a serious crash occurs. Now, data which could be collected includes vehicle generated data. They could improve traffic light timings, for example, and they could target to road maintenance planning, because they would be using real-time data which could identify perhaps slippery surfaces or potholes. Now, trials are already underway in which linked vehicles are collecting data regarding extreme driving manoeuvres such as forceful braking, and that is precisely geolocated to specific points on the road surface. And what the report says, that this enables highway engineers to investigate places where there are early indications that drivers are having to take emergency action. Maybe they're swerving, maybe they're braking, and then they can go and look at it and try and determine what the cause of the problem actually is. So it could be something like a hidden junction, it could be regularly queuing traffic where there's no warning that there's a queue ahead, or of course damaged road surface that people are having to swerve around the big potholes. Now, Steve Gooding, who is the director of the RAC Foundation, he said few people would disagree that prevention is better than cure, yet yet, whilst a great deal is known about those locations where fatal or serious crashes have already occurred, the road safety world has long wanted to know more about the cause and locations of near misses, which could point to places where a serious crash is just waiting to happen in time to do something about it. And he says that road users might be forced to brake harshly or steer violently because the road layout is throwing up unexpected and dangerous situations. And he says when this pattern of behaviour is seen repeated at certain locations, it means highway authorities can check whether they need to change road layouts or manage risk by changing the speed limit, for example, before someone gets hurt. And Mr Gooding called on the government to take the lead nationally to move beyond what he called showcase pathfinder projects to a single universal application. And I will be coming back to this topic at the end of the show, because coincidentally, guess what I was writing about. Okay, so don't forget, if you my supporter shout out from last month, I just meant to get this one up to date and I forgot, but all these people have contributed over the course of July, so many thanks to you all. Your contributions are very, very welcome. Now, a new trial online DVLA portal has been created. It basically allows you to enter your vehicle data, your driving license information, and it's in a public testing beta phase at the moment. So to use it, you'll need an email address, you'll need a current UK passport or one that has expired within the last 12 months, plus a GB driving license or a national insurance number to sign up. Now, once you've input your information and your identity has been verified, then the system allows you to add your vehicles by using reference number off the V5, that's your registration certificate, and right now each vehicle has to be added. It's not actually pulled from the data that they already have, which is interesting. Once the data is logged, you can check the information that's on the V5, make sure it's actually right, although what you do if it's wrong I don't quite know, presumably you send it back with a note to that effect. You have the ability to set up reminders for when your MOT and vehicle tax are due to be renewed, and you'll get a notification of what it costs when it comes up. The MOT status is also shown, so if you've got a garage full of bikes, particularly some that you might only keep taxed for part of the year, it's useful, I guess, to keep it all in one place to see which are actually ready to ride. Now, including the provision set up text and email reminders, something you can already do actually. You can choose to keep or ditch the posted paper reminders, and that I suspect is the big argument in favour of putting this stuff all online, because what it means is the DVSA can save cash because they won't have to post it out. But frankly, I like the paper reminder because I can pin it to a little notice board where I can't easily forget it or ignore it, or as is likely with a sort of digital reminder, simply deleted and forgotten about. So now in the future, the DVLA, they intend to expand the service to allow users to apply for provisional driving licenses and to carry out the 10-year driving license renewal online by uploading a fresh photo. Frankly, I am always slightly dubious about systems like this, because what they're doing, of course, is they are cross-linking a lot of personal data. Asking for the national insurance number, for example, puts all sorts of other data into the hands of the DVLA, but it also conversely links your vehicles with your national insurance number. Many people may not be bothered about this, but I just feel it's sort of, it is Big Brother watching over us, and I'm not entirely sure I like it. Okay, so what was I going to say? Oh yes, reminder, that's right. If you set yourself an alarm for 11 o'clock on Sundays and Wednesdays, you will be in time for my show. A little bit early for my show because I was quite late starting this morning. But if you miss them, don't forget the easiest place to catch up is over on my YouTube channel, Survival Skills UK. Don't forget that all important UK on the end of Survival Skills, or you won't find my specific channel. Right, okay, so what else is going on in the world? Well, an East Yorkshire man from Beeford near Driffield, he lost his sight sadly due to complications from surgery. He's on a fundraising mission, and his latest challenge requires the help of the biking community. Now, 64-year-old Andrew Elliker-Reeve, he used to ride a motorcycle, is attempting to ride pillion on as many bikes as he can in one day later this month in support of Guide Dogs UK. He now needs as many experienced riders to assist him as can possibly be organised. Now, Andrew is a regular at the Seaways Cafe in Fridaythorpe, another cafe. I've no idea where that one is, but hopefully it's a nice one. He said he'd just finished his lunch when the proprietor, Mike, came over to greet him. Now, last time we were there, he said if I ever fancied riding pillion, he'd arrange it for me. I used to ride a bike myself, and of course, with Seaways Cafe being so popular with bikers, he reckoned he could find a volunteer. Well, things developed. Mike is a very charitable man, and I am slightly barking. Within half an hour, we'd arranged a charity day for Guide Dogs UK. So now, all Andrew needs are actually the passenger seats on motorcycles, so he wants to ride as many bikes, hitch a lift on those bikes, between 9 AM and 5 PM on Monday, August the 21st. So you've got a few days yet to organise yourselves for that. So basically the idea is you just head for Seaways Cafe on the day, but remember you must be insured to carry a pillion passenger, and not all motorcycle policies now cover that automatically. And he says even though I'm a brave lad, he wants experienced riders who can give him a short out and back ride. Andrew has thanked Mike for his help to organise the event, and so it should be good fun. And he said come and join us if you can, with or without bikes. Lady R, his wife, would appreciate the company. So even if you can't take him out on a ride, pop over there, pop some money. I'm sure there'll be a collecting tin or something. Pop some money in over there and help Guide Dogs for the Blind. And take Mike out possibly on a quick spin on your bike. Just don't frighten him too much. Right, okay, so on with the next section of the show. Oh, that's the Storm Antony. So there we go. Bikes, we're on to bikes. I've got a comment to come back to. So who's that? It's Kevin saying thumbs up. Yeah, okay. Right, now you may recall that I've been covering Kawasaki's prototype e-bikes. They have a fully electrically powered bike which has been displayed, and they also have a hybrid, which I think is a pretty interesting option. Now these have been seen demoed out on the track in Japan, but they've also shown off at the Milan show last autumn. Now rather than attempt to build a completely new machine, Kawasaki have saved themselves some time by simply swapping out the ICE and gearbox from an existing bike, their 400 Ninja model. Now at the time, Kawasaki said they expected to roll out their first electric bikes late in 2023. Now whether they'll hit that sort of fairly ambitious target, I'm not so sure, but it does appear that back on Monday, July the 31st, Kawasaki Heavy Industries Limited was granted type approval in Australia for a motorcycle going by the designation NX011A, with variants listed as NR011A and NX011A. So, alright, what are those particular machines? Well, the photos that were filed with the approval document show that the NR011A is the already seen ZE1, the naked, and the other bike, the NX011A, refers to the Ninja E1. So let me see if I can get a picture of that up on screen. There it is. Let's zoom in on it so you can see that a little better. And that is the bike in question. I presume that's from when it was shown at the track. Whoops, that's not gone where I wanted it to. There we go. I assume that's Suzuka. I think that was where it was shown off. Now, power is listed as 9 kilowatts, so that's about 12 horsepower. So basically, that's fine for a small commuter or a learner legal bike here in Europe. Now, they are a little heavier than the comparable ICE bikes, but not by a lot. The Naked ZE1 tips the scales at 135 kilos, which is just under 300 pounds. The Fared Ninja E1 weighs in at an extra 5 kilograms, an extra 12 pounds. Now, what's not yet clear is whether the bikes are set to utilize the Gachaco swappable battery. Now, you may remember this, I have talked about it in the past. Japan's big four motorcycle manufacturers have all signed up to create a standard for swappable batteries that can be pulled out and recharged in a dedicated battery swapping station. So basically, you ride up to it with a near empty battery, take your existing battery out, bung it into a slot and pull out a new battery, a freshly charged one, from another slot and drop it into your bike. Now, the problem is, though, as we've already seen with the electric moped that Honda have released based on those batteries, they are pretty tiny. Honda's three-wheeled gyro Canopy E is fitted with two of these batteries. They have a total capacity between them of just 2.6 kilowatts. And so at a sort of a 20 mile per hour crawl around town, they will only give you about 48 miles or 77 kilometers of range. So riding a 125 equivalent motorcycle up to 3 times that kind of speed is likely to drain the battery probably in less than 20 miles. So unless your total commute really is only 10 or 15 miles, or you can recharge at your workplace, or you're riding in a city never more than a mile or two from a swap station, it's hard to see how those bikes really can be practical. Now, my guess, since the bikes are actually built around an existing model, is it will not use the swappable battery technology. I'm speculating here, but I think they're likely to be fitted with something rather larger that is a bespoke fitting for that machine. To give you some kind of comparison, the Learner Legal US built Zeros, they come with a 7.2 kilowatt hour battery, I believe, and they do offer a range, they say, up to about 100 miles. So anticipate round about 60, sort of, if you're using the bike at speed. Anyway, we'll just have to wait and see how it happens. But those Kawasaki's, it does look like they will be appearing on the market in not too distant future. Right, okay, on to the final bit of the show today, which is about collecting the crash data. Now, I talked earlier about the new system which would bring in active data from vehicles actually in use, and that could be a game changer, and I'll explain why. Now, you probably have noticed over the last few weeks I've been disappearing down a bit of a rabbit hole with this story, because I really started out, I just wanted to look at what I said was the somewhat unscientific approach that was being used by Warwickshire's Road Safety Partnership to stick up the Think Bike and the Road ride safe signs around popular biking routes. They said that since a lot of bikes went past, when they were sticking them on a pole, they must have been in the right place. But using an online website, collisionplot.co.uk, I couldn't see any serious crashes in 10 years on one route they seemed to think was high risk, whilst one they decided didn't need a Think Bike intervention was actually littered with powered two-wheeler crashes along most of its route. Now, last week I was looking at the prime gateway signs and the markings that are helping to change rider behaviour up in Scotland. The idea is that these are on left-hand bends, and what they do is they nudge the motorcyclist away from oncoming traffic. It's another topic I've got to cover, nudge theory. The reason this is important is because, in contrary to popular belief amongst many riders, most head-on collisions on bends are not resulting from cars running wide and into bikes. It's the other way around. It's the motorcyclist who commits the error, hits the car head-on. Now, I mentioned I was aware of similar projects in Australia and New Zealand, but Ian Shuttler promptly got on to me to tell me about an article in the German motorcycle magazine Motorrad, and it seems that similar schemes are being trialled in a number of European countries, including Belgium, the Netherlands, Austria, Germany, Slovenia and Switzerland. Now, I've not read the article yet, so I can't comment directly on how comparable they are, so I will have to come back to that topic too. But today I just want to talk about how looking at actual crashes, particularly when we limit studies to serious or fatal crashes, is really only revealing one aspect of the problem. Now, some years back, Duncan McKillop, who is a commentator on my page on a fairly regular basis, and he's always good for a soundbite quote, he said, "Count to your surprises because surprises count." Now, what did he mean? Well, surprises are something that happens that we don't expect, and they or something that didn't happen we were expecting to happen. So basically, when the situation in front of us unfolds in a way that we weren't anticipating, then we are surprised. And this is really important because surprise is connected directly with the irrational actions, the illogical responses that riders and drivers often demonstrate in response to a problem, and we respond in a way that accident investigators don't expect us to respond. And this is why we often refer to, sort of bad driving. We talk about sort of people who should have done something and didn't, or did do something and they shouldn't have done it. The problem is, of course, that if the surprise happens in a situation which it leads directly to an emergency, the illogical response is what often leads to a collision rather than an avoidance manoeuvre. Now, if you want to know more about this, go and look at what I've written on Keith Coates' survival reactions. I've been talking about these for many years, virtually since Keith Coates wrote about them. So if you want to know why we respond to surprises with unplanned responses, the answer is in Keith Coates' survival reactions. Typically, for example, we freeze and don't do anything. One of the things we do on motorcycles is we tend to over brake, which is why we now have ABS on motorcycles, and we tend to target fixate too. We look at where we're going to crash. We find it very difficult to drag our eyes away. So those are the survival reactions that are typical. But come back to Duncan. So what he was implying was that if we experience a lot of surprises as we ride, we're probably not predicting what happens next very well, are we? Now, as we've explained, right now most road safety interventions are based on retrospectively looking at crash data. That's what I've been doing with the collision plot data online that I've showed you in previous shows. Because what we're doing is we're looking to see where there have been fatal and serious crashes, and also sometimes the less serious incidents. But they're all historic. The trouble is, the vast majority of incidents that actually happen to us on the road don't result in a crash. We may have an incident that surprises us, but it doesn't actually get us into serious trouble. We somehow manage to get out of it, or somebody else gets us out of it. So the trouble is that unless there is a crash, it should be fairly obvious that there's little or no data available about the locations and the sort of driving situations, the riding situations that actually cause these potential crashes, the near misses. Now, if there are proactive interventions, they often focus on one single and easy to collect a data point, and that is speed. As you ride, you'll probably notice that there are sort of black rubber things nailed to the road surface. They're collecting your speed. There are also radar operated detectors at plenty of locations around the country, and I believe there are also inductive loops buried in the surface which also calculate the speed of a vehicle that goes over the top of them. Now, because the argument is always that excessive speed could be a predictor of risk-taking behaviour, that's why we spend so much time looking at speed. But the problem is, of course, that on many twisty roads, take those that I was looking at last week in Scotland, for example, many of those stretches will have a blanket 60 mile per hour speed limit. But the fact is that in many places on that road, you're going to need to go a lot slower than 60 miles per hour to be safe. 60 miles per hour is the limit, for the legal limit for the road, but it's not the speed that is appropriate to specific situations. But when you actually look at the speed checking sites, of course, they usually put where road users can attain higher speeds, because the road actually isn't limiting your performance. If you put a speed detector on a long straight, you're bound to find that there are people exceeding the notional speed limit. Now, my argument is that basically riders and drivers may well speed, but most of us are smart enough not to do it in areas that are particularly high risk, unless we are making overtaking errors, which is another matter altogether. So basically, a speed camera on a long straight, it may keep people within the limit, but does it really create safety? My guess is probably not. And the other thing that you have to say is, if you put an intervention in after there is a serious or fatal accident, you're arguably bolting the stable door long after the horse actually died. So it may possibly prevent similar errors leading to the same or similar crashes at some point down the line in the future. But for the rider who's actually being caught out, the driver who's crashed on that particular location and recording data, it's already too late. So it is the surprises that count for us. And if there are clusters of near misses in a particular area, it's only a matter of time before a serious crash can happen. Now, right now, we are limited to actually interpreting that data ourselves. If we have a near miss on a particular corner or a junction, the chances are we'll remember that for next time and probably take it a little bit easier through that specific site. And if we are really sort of intuitive about our riding, the chances are we will reckon similar sites will also pose something of a problem to us, so we may take it easier. If we've made a bit of a mess of a sort of a sharp right-hander, for example, the next series of sharp right-handers will probably back off. Not everybody does, of course, but hey ho, most of us will probably respond. So how do we get near-miss data? Well, that's the challenge, isn't it? That because unless we have some specific means of recording that, we're going to struggle. And that's what I'll be coming back to next week as I look at the data collection that can happen with connected vehicles. More on that, so next week. As I said, this is a bit of a rabbit hole. Every time I think I'm coming to the end of my investigation, I found something else to talk about. So I hope you found this interesting today. If you've got any feedback on that particular section, I'd be more than interested to hear it. I will repeat it in written form tomorrow on my Facebook and my Coffee pages, just so you can read it as well as listen to it. So if you are out and about on your bike today, do enjoy your ride. If you're not out and about on the bike, maybe you can go and have a look at that interview that I told you about earlier. That was on the Ukrainian web channel. I meant to put the link to it up, didn't I? That's what I was going to do. I knew I'd forgotten something. One moment while I just copy that and paste it into the comment stream. There it goes. So that's the link to the interview. As I say, it's about 35 minutes long, so do pop over there, have a look if you fancy, and find out what I was talking about with Maria from Odessa. All right, thank you very much indeed, as always, for looking in. It's always much appreciated, and I hope that I will see you at for the next show, which is Wednesday, which should be a live one. After that, I've got a bit of holiday arranged, and I will probably be doing some recorded shows. So just a little warning there for you. And Kevin has said, in the absence of shared near-miss database, individuals can reflect on their own. Yeah, absolutely. That's what I'm saying. If you've had one near-miss, think about where it was, try and extend what you've just learned about your riding, and try not to do it again. So on that note, I shall leave you by saying, if you are out there on your bike today, thinking about where things can go wrong is a good way of staying shiny side up. So see you again on the next show. I'm Kevin Williams, and this has been Elevenses. Thank you very much for tuning in. Bye for now.